What's going on, Spitfires? Welcome back to another episode of the Spitfire Podcast. I am your host, Lauren Lemunian, the Spitfire Coach, coming to you with another episode that hopefully helps you along the way. Today, I am sharing a coaching tool with you that I recently brought up in a session with a small business owner client. They recently have been having some staffing changes with maternity leave and growth and just creating backup. And they have, as a partnership, been able to communicate with kind of this intuitive, everyone knows what's going on, there's clear roles, and people just kind of work and flow. So what do you do when you have new energy in, you have people who are coming from a different skill set, and maybe they aren't so open in communicating? I see this come up a lot where you don't want to bother people, you don't want to seem like you have to ask too many questions, you don't want to be the nuisance or all that. So how do you, as a leader, create the space, create a mechanism for your team to communicate without really feeling, that they're on the line for things? So typical example is if you ask someone, so how are things going? And they respond, fine or good. You can now use the scaling tool, and I did this in a session with the three of them this week, which was, you can use it from 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 100. I like to use percentages when I think about confidence. So I asked them, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how confident do you feel about this? And the two owners said, about 80%, and the new employee said 70%. And so I don't look at the number as a whole. What I look for is the gap. So what is the difference? So for the owners, it was 20%. And I said, what does the 20% represent to you? And that opened up an entire conversation about different processes and procedures that needed to be communicated, or different things that needed to get answers and steps for that. And when I asked the new employee, what does that 30% represent to you? She said, well, I just don't know things and I don't necessarily, know how to ask them. I see everyone's really busy. And that busy word comes in. Busy becomes this blanket idea of someone else's time is more important than mine. They seem busy, therefore they don't have time for me. So we addressed that idea of busyness, that idea of bother, and apparently this had never come up in the months that they've been working with this person. So by calling out that 30%, we were able to have a different conversation. We could see what is the missing piece and what is it about. If you were able to fill it, what could it change? So ask the scaling question about, it could be differently. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling about this project? And so if someone says 3, that's a kind of average response. Okay, so if you were at a 4 or 5, what would have happened in order to get you there? What are the pieces that would give you a higher score? So we don't want to just take the number at face value and then assume we know what that value means. We have to look for the missing piece that allows the other person to actually create their solution. It allows us to co-create if we want to, but we have to be honest and create an environment where people can speak up. If you look at corporate America, I remember sitting in a session, I think it was Mike Rowe who was talking about this at the SHRM conference years ago, and he was talking about Ford, where Ford had this culture where people didn't want to speak up because they didn't want to seem like they didn't know the answer or that they weren't competent. So all of these things were happening behind the scenes. People were hiding, and there was a lot of shame and a lot of blame happening because people weren't owning where they weren't feeling confident. And so they were operating in this, everything's fine unless I get caught. So can you imagine the amount of stress and anxiety that was happening there? It was just, okay, hold your breath, show up the next day and hope I don't get caught. So you had a lot of errors happening. If you're older than me, then you probably remember the amount of recalls that were happening. They were having a lot of SUVs were flipping over. There were, default parts happening, and the stock was not doing well. And so they ended up making a very clear shift in leadership where they started the red, yellow, green. Now, green means everything's great, we're smooth sailing. Yellow is slow down and look at different processes and things that are happening. So pay more attention. And then red is, we got to stop and deal with this right now. So you can use red, yellow, green in different ways. Green is where you're feeling really confident. You have everything you need. Yellow is, I need some help. I need some people to step in and support me. And red is, holy crap, all hands on deck. It's a great way of communicating in an objective way without judgment of, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm in trouble, I need help. So by just giving people a different language to go off of, you can get more insight. So if I was at a yellow and I didn't want to just step in and take over, I could ask them, well, what would get it to a green? What do you need in order to feel like this is a green area? So that's how you use it in colors. You can use it in the numerical system. And if people are more in language, in an emotional sense, you can ask them, so how are you feeling about this? What we want to avoid are those glossy, like average, good, fine, okay. We want to be curious about what that means, because as soon as we jump into assumption, we're missing so much information. We're missing all of that context that goes behind the okay, the fine. So if someone says, you know what, I'm feeling really great about it. Oh, really? Tell me why. What's going on? Or, you know what, I'm not super confident. I'm feeling a little frustrated. You know what? Let's talk about it. What's going on here? So you want to take it that step further. You want to be inquisitive like a 5-year-old, not in an annoying way that makes you want to like go lock yourself in the bathroom. But what are those things that you're assuming that you're not getting? Scaling opens the door for you to be curious, to then get more insight so that you can be a resource to them. The biggest injustice that we can do is to ignore people. They're giving us all of those signals and signs, and it's up to us to catch it. It's up to us to listen to the words and the energy behind the words. So use scaling, try it out. If you do 1 to 5, make sure that you're clear on 1 is low, 5 is high. You get to set the parameters on this. If you're using 0 to 100%, make sure that you're asking what does that gap look like? What do these numbers look like? What's missing? What's here? What does this represent? All of this information is at your fingertips, and it's up to you to start asking the questions and to start capturing it so that it can become a major tool for you and your team. I've got this tool and many others in my new ebook, Prioritization Hacks, 5 Key Tools to Maximize Your Day. It's available now on Amazon and on my website at spitfirecoach.com, and on my brand new website, this is the first time I'm talking about it, spitfireinstitute.com. That's my more corporate style website that's there for teams and empowered leaders to really hone in on those skills so that they can be Spitfires at work. So Prioritization Hacks is there for you to implement in your job or with your family. It works. These are universal principles. You may have heard these things before, but there's a reason why you keep hearing them. It's because it works. So use the tools. They are there for you. Be curious, get clarification, get verification. Use scaling because it will open major doors. It will be like the Lucky Charms explosion of color and flavorful marshmallows. I don't know what I'm talking about. I love Lucky Charms. But try out scaling. Let me know how it goes. Hit me up at lauren@spitfirecoach.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. And to all the Spitfires out there, keep being awesome.